Joel chapter number 1. We introduced our book last week here in the first chapter, and we saw that the prophet Joel is speaking to 5 different groups about 4 different important subjects, things that they needed to do. We talked about the elders and the basically general population of the country of Judah, who were going through catastrophic times. Their economy was falling apart because the locusts had come and ate all the crops and everything that went with it. And there was a great drought in the land. So nothing could be grown to be able to replenish what was lost. They were in tough straits, in difficult times. And he called out the elders and the general population. In verse 2, "Hear ye this, old man, and give ear, all ye inhabitants of the land. Hath this been in your days, or even in the days of your fathers?" And he told them in verse 3, tell the next generation about these things. One of the great things that we have as a difficulty in our society today is a lack of knowledge. We've got information. Oh, we've got information till the cows come home. Thanks to Al Gore and the internet, we've got great information. More than we want, in all reality. But if you ask the cashier at Walmart to count back your change, they couldn't do it. Unless that computer told them how much change to give you. No knowledge. When the Old Testament prophet said of the nation of Israel, "My people are destroyed for lack of knowledge." And our society is destroyed because of lack of knowledge. We have all these people running around. I call them rebels without a clue. It's basically what they are. They don't understand history. That's why they want to destroy it and rewrite it. Because they don't understand it and they want it to fit their narrative. It's kind of like churches and religious cults that want to rewrite the Bible to fit their doctrine. Dangerous game. And we come down here to verse number 5, where we will pick up our thoughts tonight. And the prophet Joel goes on, "Awake ye drunkards, and weep, and howl, all ye drinkers of wine, because of the new wine, for it is cut off from your mouth. For a nation is come up upon my land, strong and without number, whose teeth are the teeth of a lion, and he hath the cheek teeth of a great lion. He hath laid my vine waste and barked my fig tree. He hath made it clean bare and cast it away. The branches thereof are made white. Lament like a virgin, girded with sackcloth, for the husband of her youth. The meat offering and the drink offering is cut off from the house of the Lord. The priests, the Lord's ministers mourn. The field is wasted, the land mourneth, for the corn is wasted, and the new wine is dried up, the oil languisheth. Be ye ashamed, O ye husbandmen. Howl, all ye vine dressers, for the wheat and for the barley, because the harvest of the field is perished. The vine is dried up, the fig tree languisheth, the pomegranate tree, the palm tree also, and the apple tree, even all these trees of the field are withered, because joy is withered away from the sons of men. The next group that Joel talks to, he speaks to the drunkards. And he tells them to wake up and weep. See, if you were a drunkard in Judah in these days, this was tough times. You'd have to give up drinking. Why? There was no wine to drink. No strong alcohol to drink. And with the exception of pointing out the insincerity of some of the worshipers of God in Joel chapter 2, verses 12 and 13, drunkenness is the only sin that Joel names in this book. He doesn't name idolatry. He doesn't name any of the other sins that Judah was committing at this time. He just mentions drunkenness and the insincerity of some of the worshipers of God. And this is a serious sin, the sin of drunkenness. It's not preached about much anymore. Probably not since the days of Billy Sunday. But it should be. Because it's a terrible problem and a plague in our land. Alcoholism and drunkenness destroys families, destroys marriages, destroys relationships. It's a destroyer. And yet, there are some Christians in America that think, well, if I have a beer, it's okay. I don't think so. Not to what my Bible teaches and what my Bible says about drinking. This is a sin that the prophets often condemned. If you go back to the book of Hosea, in Hosea chapter 7, and verse number 5. Hosea chapter 7 and verse number 5. In the day of our king, the princes have made him sick with bottles of wine. He stretcheth out his hand with scorners. The prophet Amos, which is on the other side of the book of Joel, Amos, chapter 4 and verse number 1. Hear this word, ye kine of Bashan, that are in the mountain of Samaria, which oppress the poor, which crush the needy, which say to their masters, bring and let us drink. They were destroying people. How? With drink. Never saw anyone in my life that ever found the solution to the problems of their life at the bottom of a beer can or at the bottom of a whiskey bottle. They just don't. Proverbs 20 and verse 1, wine is a mocker and strong drink is raging. Ephesians 5 and verse 18, and be not drunk with wine wherein is excess. Pretty straightforward what the Bible has to say. But perhaps the drunkards here, they kind of represented all the careless people in the land of Judah, whose interests were only sinful in nature. These folks, they had good reason to weep because there was no wine. And there wouldn't be any more till the next season, at least. If there was going to be a next season. They didn't know. Because of the drought and the locusts. Read there in verse 10 and verse 12 there in Joel chapter 1. The new wine is dried up. The vine is dried up. And not only did this hurt those who were drunkards, but we need to understand and keep in mind that bread and wine were staples in the Jewish diet in those days. They didn't drink water. Reason why? They couldn't purify it. You know, their water was like a box of chocolates. You never knew what you were going to get. We're blessed to have water purification in our day. So we can turn on our tap and we can drink our water. Thank God. Although I still filter it again, but, you know, some do, some don't. That's up to them. But we can do that. We can drink pure water. We can even purchase it in bottles. Back in those days, water was a risky business, so wine was a lot better to drink in those days. And wine certainly wasn't as strong as the alcohol that we have today, because it was made much differently than they make it today. The alcohol content was much less, because they fermented it for much less time than wineries and the beer and alcohol people ferment their stuff today. So even the people who didn't get drunk were affected by this loss. As we go on to verse number 6, and there we see that Joel compared the locusts to an invading nation, to lions with sharp teeth. There in verse number 6. And they attacked the vines and the fig trees, two essential things of the Jew's life and of the Jewish diet. Having one's own vineyard and fig trees was a symbol of success and contentment back in those days of Eastern culture. In Joel chapter 2 and verse number 22, we see there, "Be not afraid, ye beasts of the field, for the pastures of the wilderness do spring. For the tree beareth her fruit, the fig tree and the vine do yield their grapes," or yield their strength, It's mentioned in Isaiah 36 and verse 16, and again in Amos chapter 4 and verse 9, and Psalm 105 and verse 33. We want to note that Joel uses the personal pronoun of my here. He hath laid my vine waste and barked my fig trees. He uses the word there. He uses that word there, my, as he speaks of the land and its vegetation. For as he is speaking for the Lord there, all of the land and the world and everything in it belongs to the Lord. Does it not? He created it. It belongs to him. So God has a right to do with it whatever he sees fit. Is that not right? That is right. Now, if you're going through a situation like this, but God was punishing the nation for their sins against him. Next, we see that he talks with the farmers there in verses 8 through 12 where we read. And he tells the farmers to despair and wail. There in verse 10 and verse 11, Joel points out some of the crops that the locust and the drought have destroyed. He points out the grains, the wheat and the barley. Essential. The new wine and the oil, also essential things. The fruit of the pomegranate, the palm trees, and the apple trees, the fig trees. From one season to the next, the locusts ate whatever grew, and the drought kept the soil from producing any more. So we get down to the end of chapter 1 and verses 18 through 20, we see that Joel also mentions the beasts of the field, the flocks and the herds in their pastures. They are affected as well. There's no water to drink. There's no grass to eat. There's no hay to give them. And so they slowly wither away. See the here. See the awful cost of sin against God here. It was once said that if God doesn't judge America, he'd have to apologize to Sodom and Gomorrah. If our nation continues in its sinful path that it is going down today, do you not think God would not judge it? Certainly. Because he is a holy, just, and righteous God that cannot just wink at sin. All the farmers could do was to express their lament and their grief. Similar to an engaged girl mentioned there in verse number 8, lament like a virgin girded with sackcloth for the husband of her youth. And they could only express their lament and their grief similar to an engaged girl whose fiancé has died. The situation seems quite hopeless. And as we look at verse 13 through 20 next time, the last group that we will look at will be the spiritual leaders of the nation of Judah.